You are now listening to
Chakras and Shotguns. Welcome to Chakras and Shotguns, the podcast that guides you on a journey of spiritual development and personal preparedness. I'm Jen, a former lawyer, a mother of two, and a human design enthusiast.
And I'm Mick, a marketer, energy healer, and student of shamanism.
The question we wanted to ask today is, how can the messages that society tells us get in the way of our spiritual growth and our ability to manifest our desires, hopes, and dreams? Today, we're exploring what we call spiritual imposter syndrome.
But before we get into that, I did want to take a moment to shout out our newest patron on Patreon. So shout out to China.
Hey, China.
We really appreciate your support. And for those of you who do not know, haven't checked out our Patreon, we want to encourage you to go on patreon.com/chakras and shotguns and check out what we have available to our patrons. There's discounts on merch. There are additional bonus content, a prepper checklist, and an opportunity for readings and Reiki with Jen or me.
Yeah, in that bonus content, there's some real good goodies in there. We have our past life regression stories. We talked about past life regressions with Marcy Barron in episode 52. There is a picture from when we were at the energy vortexes. There's some spooky shit in the picture too. So definitely check that out. We have really good stuff. Maybe not as good as Robin Dixon finally telling us the true tea about who Juan was stepping out with, the blonde that looked like Karen. If you know, you know, my Real Housewives fans out there. But there was some really good stuff out there. So please take a moment and check it out.
Are you ready to get into some breath work?
I am. That was very Southern, I reckon. So let's get into it. For today's breath work, I thought I would set the theme of memory, remembering, and particularly about the self, remembering who we are in this moment. And it's going to make more sense as we get into it, and it definitely goes along with the main topic. So let's get into it. Let's take 3 deep cleansing breaths together. Inhaling in through the nose, expanding your belly. Sitting up a little bit straighter. Holding that breath at the top. And then audibly exhale that breath back out through your mouth. Releasing all of that stale air, pent up nerves, anxiety, releasing all of that. Let's do it again. Inhaling in through your nose. Maybe noticing where you may be tense, where you're holding. Are your hands clenched? Is your jaw tight? Are you frowning? Let's exhale that breath back out through the mouth. Again, releasing all of that energy, even if that means that you slouch a little bit. Maybe feel yourself deflate as you release all of that energy and all of that air. Let's do one more breath together. Inhaling in through your nose. Holding at the top. And this time, we're going to sigh that breath back out through the nose. Now that we're aware of our breath, I ask you to take your right hand and put it on the center of your chest, where your heart chakra is. Take your left hand, place it on your belly. You're near the solar plexus chakra, where you get confidence and power, and your other hand is on your heart chakra, where you feel love. And I want you to just take a moment to be still, be present, express gratitude for those spaces. Taking this opportunity to remember that you are love. Remember that you are powerful. You are confident. You are capable. That you are each and every one of those things in this present moment at this time. Feel each of those emotions. Feel that love and acceptance, that passion for life, that creativity, that fire in your belly. Let yourself feel loved and safe, celebrated right now in this moment. Remembering your inner power, your power to create, your power to love yourself and others. And gratitude for the truth of that. We're going to finish our breath work with an affirmation. You can say it out loud or mentally. But as we're still holding on to our heart and our solar plexus, I'd like for you to say, I am powerful. All right.
Super dope, Jen. Really enjoyed that. And I think it, as you mentioned, lends very well to today's main topic, which is spiritual imposter syndrome.
Yeah, this is a topic that I have personally thought a lot about since we started our spiritual journey. And to be frank, it's a topic that I've been trying to have on the show for a very long time. And Mick was like, what's the meat? Like, what are we talking about? And I think it took us moving and taking these huge leaps of faith in leaving our corporate jobs, becoming fully self-employed, moving away from most of our family to a new place that I really started to put all the pieces together as to what this really is about. We really had to lean into what we believe and our vision of what we were trying to build when we moved our family to LA. And some really interesting things have come up in the process.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit. But first, let's start with a definition of what imposter syndrome is. So per Psychology Today, people who struggle with imposter syndrome believe that they are undeserving of their achievements and the high esteem in which they are, in fact, generally held. They feel that they aren't as competent or intelligent as others might think, and that soon enough, people will discover the truth about them.
Then you're a scammer. For example, you may feel like despite all of your hard work, you didn't really deserve that promotion. Even though, like, before you got promoted, you were like, I need to be promoted. And then you get into the space and you're like, they're going to find out that it was a huge mistake to put me into this role. And the people who often suffer from imposter syndrome the most are women, people of color, those in the LGBTQ plus community. They are particularly susceptible to suffering from imposter syndrome. And why is that? In a work setting where we tend to see, regular schmegula imposter syndrome a lot, it can be from a lack of representation. So if you get promoted to a certain level in your company and there were only 2 other Black women in that position, you may ask yourself, well, how did I make the cut?
Mm.
As we know, any marginalized group has stereotypes about them. And if you identify with that group, then you may attribute those stereotypes, not that you believe them, but you may believe that other people believe them. So you can almost adopt them yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychological studies around this where it's like if you tell people that they're going to take a test and be judged on something that they're stereotypically not good at, they perform worse on the test. It's called like stereotype threat. So yeah, that pops up as well.
So an example of this is you telling yourself, well, they don't think that I can lead because I'm a woman, and they think I'm too emotional. And am I too emotional? I don't think I'm too emotional. And you'll swirl and swirl and swirl to your detriment. And because we're specifically talking about spirituality in this episode, let's examine the images of the divine that we grew up seeing, especially if you grew up traditionally Christian. We talk about this book a lot, which is called Know Thyself, and it goes into how if the deities that we worship don't look like us, how can we recognize our own power? I think this is also very insidious. Like when that concept was first told to me, it immediately took me back to how many African Americans in particular came to know Christianity, and it was through indoctrination from slave masters. And really, in general, like with indigenous people and colonialism and them bringing the gospel as they take over these people's communities and cultures and land, etc., that the image that you were supposed to worship, full stop, there was no negotiation about it, right? Like it was under threat that you were supposed to worship this person that did not look like you at all and that looks like your oppressors. Then taking that a step further, women, we tend to see deities. Of course, like in the Christian church, it's all male, that God is he, Jesus is a man, Holy Spirit is a blank, non-binary, I guess.
Yeah.
But there is no real room for women unless they are the Virgin Mary. They kind of throw in the one prostitute sometimes, but I kind of feel like they don't like talking about her either. And so if I can't see myself in powerful energy, am I more likely to take a back seat to a man or take a back seat to a white man? Because I've been conditioned from a very early age and generationally and ancestrally to worship something that does not look like me and does not reflect me at all.
Yeah, I think historically what we see from most cultures, if you go back and, read what anthropologists write about different cultures that they've studied, everyone as a society will create an image of the divine if they want to put the divine in human form that looks like them. And so it's very unnatural when we as a community, when I'm talking about we as a community, I mean African Americans, have these images that don't look like us, right? It's just not what you see from basic human nature across history. And so there has a psychological effect on us. And that's really what the book Know Thyself kind of goes into.
And also, even if you don't adopt that conditioning yourself, we can see how it can play out in the roles that women are given, specifically in church, right? I remember growing up that there were 3 pulpits on the altar in my Baptist church, and I could never stand in the middle one. Why? Didn't make a lot of sense to me. God was going to strike me down if I stood at the middle pulpit, but like even as a child, and it was like women weren't allowed to be speakers. You had to be on the sidelines. And you think about like the patriarchy and misogyny that is fueled from only allowing male identifying figures to be powerful.
So let me ask you this. In the middle pulpit, was that reserved for the pastor?
No.
Or okay.
If we had, I distinctly remember this, we had not that it was traumatic or anything. We had a MLK Day like program. Different kids were giving speeches. I had to give my speech on the side pulpit. Boys were able to give their speech from the middle pulpit.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So fun.
So I have thoughts on that, but I think that's a whole nother episode. I don't really want to get into all of that right now. But let's get back to imposter syndrome and what underlies that, which I think is doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really doubting our abilities, our credentials, our skills, and really our magic, right? And this can show up in our lives, definitely in spirituality. One way that, I've personally experienced this, and I'm still trying to figure out really if it's imposter syndrome or if it's something else. But I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. I said, I'm Mick and I'm a student of shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't really talked much about it on our show before, but I have over the last 18 months to 2 years really gone down this journey into shamanism. It first kind of started kind of my clairvoyance. I was getting kind of visions of different power animals. There were real life animals that were dropping off feathers in our yard. Actually caught a picture of one falcon in one situation dropping off some feathers. I was kind of gifted this staff that I carry now when I do energy clearing and energy work in certain spaces. It kind of came to me in going to into nature essentially, and was told via meditation that this staff was for me. And then I even did some formal training. I have a mentor that I've worked with, and I've gone through the rites of passage for shamanism. And I think I am very hesitant about using the title shaman because I think in some ways part of me doesn't feel like I've gone through the route that is traditional for kind of having that title. I feels almost like I'm still not fully qualified to call myself that, even though you go through the rites, like you've become a shaman, right? So I don't know, it's this weird feeling that I have around the word. And so I'll say things like I've studied shamanism, or I'm a student of shamanism, and instead of just like saying, yes, I'm a shaman. And what's interesting about the definition we read is that like maybe people will give you achievements and acknowledgement. So there are people out there who will say, oh, he's a shaman. But like I don't necessarily own that and wear that. So it's just something that I think I'm trying to unpack still on my journey.
What do you think it will take for you to accept that title?
I don't really have a good answer to that question.
Okay.
I think part of me feels like if I call myself that, I'm limited in some ways.
Okay.
And then part of me feels like it is not something that I deserve. So it's like this twofold thing. So I think it's like not fully imposter syndrome. Like maybe half of me feels like an imposter with it. But then the other half of me is kind of like, I don't want to necessarily be closed or like defined by that word.
Okay. I think it's interesting. I think there's a really good lesson in that example though, of how we can have an idea of what something is supposed to look like, including who fits that title or that role. Like this can have implications for like the president of the United States. For a long time, the president of the United States was only white men.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have an idea of like, oh, well, I can never be president because I don't look like that.
Yeah.
But also in this sense, right? Like, what does a shaman look like, and how long have they been doing it, and what are the credentials, and what's the checklist that you have to check off? Yeah. And the beauty of it is that who said that you can't break the mold?
That's fair. I do think that there is, as I think about it, every shaman that I can kind of think of, they kind of come from a line of it. And I haven't had ancestrally, at least not in the physical world, a connection to people who have been shamans in my bloodline. So I think that's probably part of it too, that like I doubt if I'm truly stepping in the place that I need to be in, even though I've been told by people who have gifts and channeling and whatnot that this is something that is part of my bloodline. Mm-hmm. I just haven't had that like physical contact with those people to like walk me through a lot of this.
But also, what if you're the new anchor point for the bloodline?
I mean, you raise great points. I'm just telling you how.
No, I know. I was like, well, I think that's the beauty of it. I think that like when you're in that doubt and it is your truth, right? Of like, no, I really am doubting in this moment whether or not I fit here or there. Mm-hmm. And like that's valid. I'm not going to take that away from you or anybody else who has ever suffered from imposter syndrome, but it's also kind of interesting and like for me kind of mind-blowing. Like sometimes I'll say like, who am I to do this? And then I'm like, why not me?
Yeah.
Like, and why not me do it in this new way that's never been done before just because everybody else does it that way? And then I'm like, yeah. And then I like get in my bag. I'm like, yeah, why not? You know? So that's why I was like, you know, oh, I'm missing this. But it's like, but maybe you're supposed to be the first to step into that.
Yeah. No, you're right. We'll eventually do an episode on shamanism and I'll open up a little bit more about it, but that's where I'm at with it right now.
And even beyond spiritual spaces, like what Mick's talking about with shamanism, we can also feel this doubt innately, like inside, and it will impact how we show up in our daily lives. So for me, it's popped up in other ways, particularly when I'm trying to manifest my desires. So at the beginning of the episode, I talked about like leaving LA, like I quit my job and we immediately like went into like moving, and I, you know, am working on a short-term rental in Joshua Tree, and I'm flipping a house in Arlington right now. And right now is not a lot of dollars coming in. These are definitely investments that haven't reached the end of their like the project. So it's still in the project phase, but there were times where I was just like, what am I doing? So I was feeling all of these doubts. I was feeling like a crazy person. Like people would have thought that I was crazy. Like you're a VP of a major retailer. You're a lawyer. You've been a lawyer for like 11 years. Why are you doing this? To go buy and flip houses? Like, didn't we see that not work out? And so at times I felt like, and I struggled with telling people that that's what I was doing because I felt like I didn't fit. Like it wasn't real for me to say that I invest in real estate, that I'm a real estate investor, that I'm a real estate entrepreneur. Like I even have to force myself to say that in a room with just me and Mick. And he knows intimately like what I'm doing every day. And feeling like either A, people are going to figure out that I'm an idiot with money and that I just waste money and I push my family into bankruptcy. Like that's like the craziest imposter syndrome thought I had. Or B, that I think I have good taste and I don't, and people are going to figure out that I have terrible taste. And I don't have an interior design degree. Mm-hmm. I just feel like what I like in a space. It's also like this idea that like I'm doing this and then like people come to my house and they're like, her house ain't that cute. You know, she ain't really put that shit together like I thought, you know, not the way she be talking. And I had to trust in myself that yes, in a lot of ways I'm doing this scared. In a lot of ways, I think that people are like, I don't know if she knows what she's doing. And I have come across that. I've come across contractors who were like kind of squinting at me a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then I start talking about like a house. And then I'm like, I do know what I'm talking about. And they were like, she does know what she's talking about. So,
but if we back up for a second, I think what's interesting, you've gotten compliments before on how you've decorated our home. No one has ever said anything negative, but why
would they?
But you've had this negative voice that somehow has animated inside of you to make you feel like you're an imposter.
Yeah.
Like, because you don't have a design degree or because you didn't take real estate investing classes or anything, that you are somehow not suited for this.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But why would someone come in my house and say, I wouldn't have put that blanket with that couch? And they can leave. That's also another like part of it is that you'll tell yourself, well, I've never heard anything negative, but why would anybody say that to my face?
You've had people ask you to help them design their space.
I know. And this is why you need a partner like Mick, who is what I would call a court reporter, because he remembers all this stuff, almost like a transcript running in his head. And then he tells me these things. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. He's making a face at me. because I really did forget about that. But then I also started thinking about highly successful people and like, does Oprah Winfrey have imposter syndrome? I'd probably say not. I'd probably say she maybe did at one point in time, but then eventually she probably didn't. Maybe she still does, but Oprah Winfrey. I don't know who else.
Steve Harvey.
What's Steve Harvey?
He wasn't a game show host before.
That's true. And some people would say he wasn't that funny of a comedian. They said he was the worst one on Kings of Comedy. That's what I heard.
Some people like Jen.
That's what I had heard in the streets.
Leave Steve alone. Steve been my boy since Apollo.
He easily could have had some doubt in his head. Jay-Z had never run a music streaming service before. Someone would argue that we didn't need another one, but he did Tidal anyway.
I believe he sold it too, right?
Did he?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay. So, yeah, I started to try and investigate, like, what are these people doing to overcome that? I think there is an element of highly successful people standing in their power, probably because they have to and they get the reps in to overcome that feeling. And of course, they're not doing this alone, but they do it anyway. They do it scared. They do it with the doubts. They don't let the doubts overcome them, because I think an element of imposter syndrome can cripple you. I've had it, crippling perfectionism, where I would look at a document over and over and over again and swear it was perfect. And then it came back with a markup and I was like, oh my gosh, they think I'm an idiot because I missed a versus an and they think I'm a dummy. And like, that wasn't the case. I think something else, like even when I couldn't power myself to get through those moments of doubt, I had to remember that I'm in this moment for a specific reason, that I've been led to this moment for a specific reason, that each of my decisions, each house that I've chosen to purchase, I have asked for guidance and was given the go ahead to make that move. And I don't know why God, spirit, source, my ancestors, my angels would set me up like that to fail. It does not make any sense.
Yeah.
And so if I couldn't feel like I could stand on my own 2 feet, I rested on that. I was like, y'all gonna have to help me through this and push me through this. But there's no way that they were going to just set me up to like leave me high and dry like that.
So I think this is a good spot to talk about some things. People may be having some ideas, some projects, some goals that they want to go out there and achieve, and they maybe feel like they aren't fully qualified to tackle those things. I want you to get out of your head and really focus on a few things that you can do to get out of that feeling of doubt and lack. So first up, got to go back to meditation. Sitting in some quiet space, going within, really feeling your energy, really understanding what you're being called to do, and sitting with that and understanding that if you're stepping within your passion, within your purpose, you're not going to fail.
Journaling, it's always a good exercise, and it'll help you acknowledge the feelings that you're feeling, because we're huge advocates for the fact that you are a human, you experience emotions, good and bad, and you need to transmute them into positive energy, but that doesn't mean that you don't feel them. So being able to acknowledge the emotions that you're going through, and it also helps really chronicle your journey. So Mick has been journaling about his shamanism journey. I have been journaling about all of my fears and frustrations and doubts with investing in real estate, being a mom of 2, trying to be a wife, trying to make friends in a new place, and all of these things. And so I think the beauty of that is when you do inevitably, because you will push through whatever hurdle that is, you can always go back and say like, wow, I see where I was led. I see what a silly thought that was, even though that felt really real to me, even though it worked out in the end, or I made a different decision and went down a different path that worked out even better. And so you'll be able to really go back and see what an incredible journey that you've been on.
Yeah, I also think you should focus on trusting yourself and your body. We are often quick to believe the narratives around us or about people who look like us and not what we know in our bodies and in our gut, right?
Mm-hmm.
The human design system, which we've talked about for several episodes, is really all about decision making based on feelings within your body.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a sacral authority, listening to your gut instinct. If you're an emotional authority, riding the wave of your emotions and making a decision after you've kind of gone through that emotional cycle. So that could be a great tool for you to help with this decision making process when it comes to spiritual imposter syndrome as well.
Mm-hmm. And when all else fails, do it scared, fake it till you make it, just be like, I am confident, I am powerful, and I'm gonna do this, and I deserve to be here. And guess what? All of those things are true. All of those things are true. And a fun fact to go along with that, this might be a TikTok fact, but I feel like I've heard it before, is that your brain can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. So in a positive way, when you say, I am confident, I do deserve to be here, I'm the best person for the job, I am the magic, because even if somebody could do it, they can't do it the way that you do it. So I am the magic. Your brain starts to believe it. And so see what could happen when you really stand in that. One other cool exercise, I know I got to get off TikTok because Mix is absolutely ridiculous. But one other cool exercise that I saw on TikTok was writing down your wins. And we're still early enough in the year that you can start implementing this. I want to do it. So you just take the time at the end of the week to write down your wins. Like write down 5 wins that you had, small or large. Like I worked out 3 times this week, or I journaled 4 days this week, or I did a really good presentation at work, and you write those down. And then when you get to the end of the month, you consolidate them. So maybe you're like, I worked out 3 times a week every week in January. Fantastic. And then when you get down to the end of the year, you further consolidate them. And then you have a list of everything that you won on in the entire year. And you would surprise yourself as to how much you've accomplished that you just forget about, that you not disregard like in a bad way, but like life is still going and another project and more work and another to-do list is popping up, that you would be surprised at how many accomplishments that we can have in a year that further in black and white show you how fucking incredible you are.
So the next time you guys are feeling that self-doubt, remember that it's a delusion. Acknowledge the feelings that you're feeling, but objectively look at what you've been doing and how you got to the present moment. You may surprise yourself. So
before we go, we just want to remind you one more time to go check out our Patreon, patreon.com/chakras and shotguns. We have 2 amazing levels, bonus content, breathwork library, a chance to have a discounted reading with Mick and I, merch discounts, like amazing, amazing things. So check it out.
And finally, guys, if you are loving the show, please subscribe and give us 5 stars wherever you listen.
Namaste.